The Blind Shovel, an arts and music podcast. Today I speak with artist and musician power couple Lesley Wheeler and Karl McComas-Reichl. Enjoy. I'm just chilling in the dark, so.
I suppose it is sundown over there already.
Yeah, in the winter it's...
Oh, yeah.
The sun goes down at like 5, I feel.
Yeah, well, you're in Jersey?
Yeah, I'm from New Jersey.
Nice. Beautiful.
And I returned to New Jersey, but in that period in between, I lived in Oakland and LA, and thus how I know Neve and Dory.
The great Baverskis.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
We can get right into it. I actually don't know much about either of you. Dory just recommended you.
Okay, cool.
Which I like. I actually like being like fully ignorant going into it.
Sick. Yeah, don't know much about you either besides Old Growth and Neve.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, let's do it.
Cool.
So you guys are a couple, correct?
That's
I
right.
assume.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you live in Los Angeles?
We do. We live in Studio City.
Studio City?
Mm-hmm.
Is that where all the studios are?
There's a few studios in Studio City, yeah. Yeah.
I am fascinated by art couples in general. You know, how long have you been married?
15, almost 16 years.
Together for 20?
Almost.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for art couples? You know, I once actually interviewed one person, I won't say who it was, but they were basically like, and perhaps they were telling on themselves, but the egos of two artists can't kind of survive a relationship. But on the other hand, I've heard artists say, I don't feel like I'm understood within a relationship if the other person is not an artist.
It would be weird to be in a relationship with someone who wasn't an artist, I think.
I think it would be pretty strange, yeah. We're in different enough zones, too, that it is like...
Non-competitive in a sense?
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
Do you collaborate?
We have, yeah. We don't do a ton of it, but we have, yeah.
There's one small moment where Karl was doing, like, live ambient stuff with the cello, and then I'm a writer, and I would read poetry while he did it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So your zones are they clearly defined? Lesley, you do visual work, but you're also a writer?
Yeah. I'm, like, trained as a poet through, like, academic situations. But then, I'm also a textile artist.
And Karl, you're strictly a musician, or?
No, I mean, mostly, yeah. I play the cello and the bass primarily. I compose music for film, TV, for other artists, do string arrangements, but I also paint. But that's more of a ancillary thing, the painting. But it's there.
I see.
Yeah.
And how do you get by? I'm always interested how artists, especially, you've been together 20 years, so you have to be somewhat old. Middle-aged or something. I'm 36. It's no insult. Yeah. But at a certain age, it becomes interesting, especially if you have disparate interests like I do as well. I find that's often antithetical to developing a good business strategy because people want to pin you down as a thing that they can come back to reliably for that service. Mm-hmm. But how do you, especially in a city like Los Angeles, how have you managed to, I suppose, commodify those skill sets over time?
I'm a teacher. I teach full-time.
Do you teach poetry?
I wish. No, I teach high school English.
Wow, there's a lot to talk about there, I assume.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Sure, yeah. It can be very fun. Yeah, it's very much like my day job. Yeah.
Karl, what do you do?
I play gigs, play a lot of live music. I teach lessons, and then all those things I also mentioned: arranging, composing. I do sell a painting every once in a while. I will go into a couple high schools, teach there. I don't know, what else do I do? That's pretty much it.
You do what you need to do.
Yeah.
Is teaching teaching is interesting to me because I went to art school and there was clearly teachers who it was what they were meant to be in some sense, and others who had to do it to get by. Mm-hmm. But do either of you feel that like a deep draw to teaching, or is it just the practicality of the thing?
Practicality for me. I do enjoy it when I can connect with a student in a meaningful way and share information. But the most meaningful thing about it is like, yeah, it feels like when I was a student, and I'm teaching mostly high school kids and younger, when I was a student, it was difficult to get adults to treat me like a person. And so I enjoy like connecting with the students just like on a person-to-person level. But yeah, it's not something I feel totally called to do by any means.
It's a little bit of both for me. Because I've been teaching for almost like 20 years, I guess, as long as I've known you. And so as I've developed as an artist and a writer, I've also developed as a teacher.
Were you always teaching English?
No, I started teaching. I went to art school in New York, and then to stay in New York, I ended up teaching public school, and I was teaching elementary special education, which is they just put you like where they have the most need. But from there, then through grad school and stuff, it was English after that. But I do like it. I just don't like the like bureaucracy and all that stuff. But the teaching part, I connect with for sure.
Yeah, I think being a teacher or being interested in the process of teaching are very different things. I have a lot of teachers in my family, and it can be very dark, I would say.
For sure.
Yeah.
Did you both go to art school?
Went to music school, so yes.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that even in my own life, I try to take lessons from where I was failed in that setting. I'm sure you can. I mean, even like you said, you went to school for poetry. I can't even begin to imagine how that looks or how that. Do you think in the end that was? Are they teaching you like structural methods for making a poem, or is it more free form?
It was more free form. I went to Pratt, so it was like a lot of really. At the time, I didn't realize it was all like adjunct professors, which then I ended up being at some point. But it was a lot of just like reading really contemporary work, and also writing your own stuff, and then getting feedback. It wasn't like classical. I ended up going to the Iowa Writers Workshop afterwards, which in its own way was much more formal than my undergrad art education. But yeah, it was more freeform and like interdisciplinary at Pratt, because I also, as a visual artist, I wanted to be able to like take drawing and get the visual side of things too.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it wasn't like, this is what a sonnet is. I don't think I actually talked about sonnets at all as an undergrad, probably.
It's always interesting to me how just the development within career-wise for artists or musicians, they seem very, very different trajectory-wise. And I understand that the teaching is certainly more foundational. Do you think you both teach if you didn't have to financially? Like, does it have a synergistic quality? I know I've talked to Dory about teaching. Dory, I believe, taught for a very long time. Mm-hmm. And he said something similar to you, Karl, that if the student wants to be there, it can be very rewarding. I mean, high school is hard because so many kids don't want to be there, I assume.
Yeah. I think in an ideal situation, I would love to teach a group of students who like were severely interested in my area of expertise. Like, that's really fun. But beyond that, it's a challenge for me. Yeah.
And your area of expertise is specifically, how would you define that? As a cellist and a bassist, you said?
Yeah, it's classical and it's jazz and it's music theory and it's like composition, improvisation, kind of all those things and how they relate. And like, yeah, I don't have a clear like rubric for any of my students, but I do feel like I impart to them a general sense of like, this is how music works. Like, these are the basic things that I feel like are important to know about music, regardless of whatever we're working on. So,
right.
Yeah. Music.
I quit teaching what year is it?
It's 2025.
Okay. 3 years ago, I quit teaching, and I was like, I'm never fucking doing this again.
And then?
And then I'm back.
Who's back, baby?
Do you mind saying why you quit?
Yeah, I didn't like where I was, for one, and I think I hadn't known anything different, and I really wanted to know what it was like to go a full calendar year without the, like, structure of a school year impressed upon it. Because either as a teacher or as a student, that had been my whole life since the age of 4 or whatever. Yeah, and I wanted to see what would happen. It was fun, but not enough.
Yeah, what happened?
I went through like lots of iterations. I was like, okay, so I want to make things and sell them. So then I tried doing like markets, but that's a huge fucking hustle.
What a grind, yeah.
And then what else did I ran like a backyard workshop, and that was really fun. I enjoyed that because then I got to like teach poetry, not even teach poetry, but just like have a space for creative writing and like people who opted in, and I got to like do what I wanted to do, but it wasn't enough financially.
Yeah, markets are just they're wild.
Yeah,
I did see your textiles. Is that what you were?
Yeah, I was doing like quilts and stuff like that. That was the first iteration, and then the second iteration was I was doing poetry on demand.
What is that?
It was just like because I have typewriters, and so I would like set up, and I was like, okay, this is a much smaller setup than setting up a whole booth of like textiles and quilts. So I just set up with a typewriter, and for $20, people would be like, you know, my partner and I just moved in together, and I want a poem to commemorate this moment. And they would tell me a little bit, and they'd give me like 10 minutes, and then I'd write a poem for them.
And then they would cry every time, pretty much.
Yeah.
Out of beauty, or they were insulted?
So angry. No, they usually like did a lot. The people who want a poem are into it. But yeah, that also wasn't enough money, it turns out.
I think one thing that also jumps out to me is, and I relate to this, perhaps you both love things that are really, really difficult to commodify. One being poetry, do you love classical music, Karl, or is that...
Yeah. I fucking love it.
It's a weird thing. I think there's people who are a little more malleable and flexible and chameleon-like with how they apply their love of art to certain mediums that are more relevant. Like, I can imagine a person who, I don't know, they see TikTok and they have a creative impulse and they're like, okay, here are the constraints, and I'm going to be very practical and make this my project. Whereas I make comic books and independent comic books, and it's at a certain age I realize like this is just not probably possible. Yeah. Based on, I didn't like that every time I went out to eat like there's something nice about paying for someone at some point, your family or friend, and that wasn't possible.
Yeah.
So I just knew something had to change, but at the same time I knew that maybe I was more stubborn about my commitment to a specific medium like that. So do you ever have the temptations to become, I guess you were saying like you can find a way to transmute something like classical for if you do scores, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think like last month was really slow, right? January was crazy here, the fires and everything. And there I was in that space of like, I have no work for like 2 or 3 weeks. Like, oh yeah, I'm thinking about going back to massage or like going to massage school and driving Lyft. But then like remembering that in the slow times is usually when the slow times are over, I remember like, oh shit, I should have used the slow time to work on my personal projects.
Right.
And then the work comes back and then I don't have time for personal projects. So like there's always a little bit of stress around that, but I'm just now learning to manage it better.
Yeah, I think there's something interesting about being in love with something that's outdated in some sense. Classical comes to mind as this, at least some classical musicians I've known, it's like supported by these, it only exists in some ways outside of the market because there's wealthy individuals who appreciate it. Does that sound correct?
Yep.
And I don't even know if poetry is afforded this luxury because I don't understand the cultural relevance of poetry anymore. Actually, the art center I run is called the Williams Center, named after William Carlos Williams. And via that process, I've come to appreciate him and his poetry. And also just recognize there was a time where poets had a certain level of, I think, influence. Am I just being ignorant, or is that kind of not the case anymore?
I think maybe like what poetry is bigger than what we are like led to think it is. So right, like poetry as song lyrics, poetry as memes, poetry as the writing you get to do that's not for like a business use, right?
Or like the memes of Jesse Balmer are quite poetic.
Yeah. I'm sure that many of the listeners are aware of the memes of Jesse Balmer.
Yeah, that's my take on it. I just think of poetry as anything that tries to exist outside the rules. So not necessarily something that has to be stanzas or published in a book that no one will read.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, that it's about a kind of melodic flow or relationship. But it is also just really interesting to me. Of all the art mediums, it's very rare that I meet a person who says, like I'm a working poet in a very literal sense. And so that's also very fascinating to me.
Totally. Often,
like even you're saying you were making poems for people, I assume for some amount of money, right?
$20.
There you go.
Yeah. Often like having been in some form of poetry school or whatever from like 2004 all the way through 2020, and watching my peers and like the people who did the thing, right? They like got all the gold rings and like went all the way through and are publishing and are like relevant within that scene as far as you can be. Like they are the ones that have the academic jobs now. And but that's like, to do that you have to be cool with moving to Bowling Green on a whim because that's where the job that year happens to be or whatever. So yeah, to be a working poet, at least in my mind, is kind of what that...
It's entangled with academic. Yeah, for sure.
Which probably isn't I guess as I got older, that was interesting to me, is like, just like you were saying about teaching, in a sense, you don't really have control over these apparatuses that grow around what you love. And it can be really challenging to understand how long you should stick it out in certain environments, I think. So I don't know much about classical, but at least in fine art painting, there is this very strange relationship between the poor artists who are effectively just vying for the attention of wealthy patrons who still think paintings are worth owning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think in like the strictly classical world, I mean, that is exactly what's going on. Like you said, with like orchestras in major cities, they're like all funded by really rich people. And that's a good thing in itself. But like, I'm finding myself more, I'm working on 3 film scores right now, and that music is still very relevant in that medium. Like, everyone appreciates a good score. Like, I think anyways that everyone has like a favorite film score associated with like a favorite film, because the music often makes the film more than the film itself. And
yeah.
Classical music is inherently like a part of that, like just the theory of it, and the way that film scores work, like imparting the emotion to the picture is like what music does. So yeah, I don't know. It's classical world is very complicated and competitive, similar to the poetry world, where like there's like 3 orchestral bass positions available in any given year, and one's in Tulsa and one's in Winnipeg, and like that's your option. Basically.
What is your relationship to modern music? Like, yeah, I remember watching Billy Joel and Howard Stern.
Sick.
And I was struck by how Billy Joel basically said, I hate that I have to write these songs with words. Like, I just want to make songs, no words.
Well, I think that comes through in Billy Joel's music. Like, the songs are good.
Hey.
I like Billy Joel all around, so.
I do too.
That's our go-to karaoke duo.
Yeah, Downeaster Alexa.
Interesting. But I just thought it was interesting that I guess I had never imagined he would have this kind of high-minded ambivalence about the whole situation, and also this pragmatism. But when it comes to, like, do you like modern music? Do you want to participate in modern culture, musically speaking? Or is it more of just, this is kind of what needs to be done to... Like, I don't know how to word this more concisely, but I think it's interesting when... I do think there were times where people were really aligned with their culture and they wanted to elevate it specifically, and they were like, I want to contribute to this kind of stacking momentum of what we're trying to build here. I think that's basically impossible in modernity at times. It just feels very fractured. But do you love pop and its sensibilities as well? Or is it just, again, where we're at?
I think that I love... Well, that's complicated to explain. I love music when music resonates with me. Like, there's pop songs now that I love. And I'm contributing, like, what I can in that world. Like, I arrange strings, or I'll perform strings for people. And, like, a song came out earlier this month, a Lucy Dacus song that I remember doing the session for and being excited about it. But then my cello playing is, like, very prominently featured on it, and it feels very nice to be, like, a part of that world when I had no intention of it. All I'm trying to do is contribute good music to the world, and wherever it ends up is good with me. And that's why I feel also passionate about the film score thing. It's like, so many film scores these days are, like, very boilerplate and not inspiring, and so it's fun to, like, think that I could influence that somehow.
Right. Again, I'm struck by how music fits into context a lot easier than certain other mediums. Like it kind of, it can be smuggled into all sorts of things. But so Lesley, you write as well, right? You were saying like well, obviously you're a poet, but you also do visual art, poetry.
Yeah.
You teach.
Yeah.
Is there another layer?
Is there another layer? Yeah, I write all sorts of stuff. I have a Substack that I've been writing on for the past few months that feels really good.
Oh, I'm fascinated to hear about that.
Yeah, it's just, I think after I finished my PhD during lockdown in spring 2020, and it kind of sapped me of a lot of joy with writing, which is, I think, one of the primary functions of a PhD program. And so I didn't write for a while. But it's been really fun to both write and then also share it, because I think a lot of writing, or at least for me personally, I was like writing, submitting to journals or contests, paying to do so, which is such like a cul-de-sac of money and ideas. And just not really doing much with stuff. I have a book that came out a few years ago, but like whatever, small press. And so it's fun to just like direct to audience publish is really fun and kind of new.
So yeah, I was thinking about Substack the other day because there's some visual artists moving to it from Instagram. And I don't really know much about it. But it did strike me as funny that it might just be blogs imagined but stronger in some sense.
Totally.
Were you blogging?
I was a Tumblr girly.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, so it was like a little bit of writing, a little bit of images too, like drawings and cartoons and whatever. But yeah, it feels a lot like that, but maybe more, I don't know if it's more grown up or it's just a product of the time. But yeah, it's got like a feed and all sorts of like fancy behind the scenes settings and stuff.
Yeah, Tumblr was the peak to me.
It was really good.
I don't exactly know why, but...
I suppose, I say I was a Tumblr girly, but I had a live journal.
Okay.
That I was like really invested into. I forgot about that. And it still like floats out there. Yeah.
I also feel like it's worth mentioning that when I met Lesley in 2006 and I was 20 years old and like in jazz school, I had never really listened to the Beatles or Joni Mitchell or really anything in like any kind of popular world apart from 90s radio hits when I was, growing up.
Yeah.
And Lesley's like very musical person and is especially about the Beatles, but about a lot of different music, and kind of blew my musical world open. And like continues to do so because she's interested in new music and like finding out about what's relevant. And so I don't know if Lesley would bring that up about herself, but she's like very influential to me about like, what is good and new and exciting, and also what is good and old and exciting in music things I didn't know about, basically.
I was going to ask about that because I know I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right. Violist? A man who plays a viola?
That's right.
Okay. and he said something similar, which I really like, this idea of being so cloistered. He didn't hear pop music till maybe around when you said. And in college, him and the boys would get together, and sneak out and whatever, just like play Mozart together.
Yes.
Maybe I'm imagining it as more... Well, no, I think it was clandestine. That's what I recall. But then he was, like you were just celebrating in some sense the bursting of the dam. But part of me is like, wow, that sounds really nice to be... I get that both sides of it, but there is something kind of, you'll never go back. You can't get back there.
I can't get back, but it is where I'm from, and so I feel like I am at home under my little rock that my parents kind of built for me.
Oh yeah, how did your parents build that, by the way? Was it like neurotic? Like they had to like, you know?
They just didn't. Like my dad was born in 1932, and he was from that like a whole nother time, and listened basically to like Frank Sinatra and Brahms, and like we always just had public radio on in the house, and my mom was a pianist and organist. And it was just all classical music and jazz all the time. And then I would secretly listen to the top 9 at 9, you know, like when like the Macarena was number 1 for however many weeks. So yeah, that's how they built it.
You know, I forget how like it would almost be impossible now to create such a focused culture within your household, I think.
Yeah.
There's just Pandora's boxes everywhere, basically. So that is kind of quaint and beautiful. What was your experience, Lesley, in respect to being raised and what you obviously like the Beatles.
Yeah.
This is important.
Grew up with a lot of music in my house. Like, it would be like Ornette Coleman after dinner, and then my dad was just like into a lot of different shit, so it'd be like Ornette Coleman or like the Grateful Dead or, you know, Bach or just
reggae.
Yeah, my dad would like import records from Kingston in the 80s. Yeah, there was just a really like a huge range, so nothing was weird or off the table, and like I kind of got an education that way. Of music and the way that it all interconnects and speaks to each other, and also like a pretty awesome like cultural understanding too, of like histories and different peoples and how the different music came to be.
And was there any textiles being made?
Yeah, for sure. My mom is a textile artist. My aunt is a really amazing quilter. My grandmother made lace and stuff, so I was always around that stuff, never thinking that I too would follow suit necessarily, but then it kind of just happened. Yeah.
So you're both steeped in it.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I always, growing up, or at least in high school, my best friends were musicians too, so that was always a part of my world, is like liking music, not necessarily playing it myself, but being around people who it was their whole life. And one of those friends actually from high school introduced me to Karl. Maeve introduced me, and she's also a bass player. So it just like, it was very natural for me to like, and this sounds like oddly weird, but like not to be handed off from one musician to another, but I just like being in that world is like, oh yeah, of course. Like I'm going to be with someone who's like, has a deep relationship with music.
And what are your differences in respect to how you view aesthetics in general? Is one of you more strict in particular and one more open? Or do you disagree violently about any particular aesthetic principle?
Wow, great questions. Aesthetically, I feel like we're pretty aligned on most things. That's a great question.
Well, I only ask because surely you have overlap, like you live together, so you make communal decisions. This painting's up here, this isn't, or we're listening to this music. And I'm sure outside of the medium choice, there's like a belief about the values of art, and you clearly were raised in slightly different manners in the sense of, I guess, sounds like you had a lot more diversity, Lesley.
Yeah.
But I know my wife and I are both very particular, so in my head there's a Venn diagram of where things work and overlap, and I guess our house reflects that largely. And then there's little corners where, you know, it's more like a private moment you might listen to that or read that?
I think I have trouble with like perfectionism and being like stilted by it and erring on inaction, and where Karl is really good at like reminding me to like shake things up. And then as a result, like Karl's the person in the house who is like, we're rearranging the living room today, it's all gonna change, whereas I would like not really do that, I don't think, ever, if I live by myself.
I'm always fucking rearranging the house just like every 6 months.
I think, but you're also good at just like keeping like your creative projects moving too in a certain way, or like approaching them from different angles, whereas I just will like stop and think, and I don't know.
I think there's like, we have our musical differences too. Like I can tell when like I've played too much Coltrane and it's overwhelming, or Lesley's played too much Springsteen and it's overwhelming to me. But
I didn't know he overwhelmed you.
No, he's a little overwhelming to me sometimes. He's a Jersey guy. How do you feel about Springsteen?
Oh, it's weird. I think almost like a fish in water. Sometimes you don't see what's right in front of you or surrounding you. So I don't have much opinion about him. What's that track? I'm on Fire.
Oh, yeah.
That's a beautiful track. But I just... That being said, I mean, Billy Joel, I think, is from Staten Island, which is different enough. But I just love... I love Billy Joel.
Man, yeah.
I have
for
a long time. And I won't... I don't think I have an opinion about Bruce Springsteen. I think I respect anyone who could do what they're doing for that long and kind of represent an entire state. It's kind of insane.
Billy Joel also, I was talking with a friend about it yesterday, actually, about how Billy Joel loves Beethoven. And like talks about Beethoven a lot, and how like, I just find that interesting that he's kind of like you said, he got sucked into this world of songwriting, but anyways.
He's also a bit of a grump, I feel. Sometimes. So, like, he would be more prone to express a kind of ambivalence about a thing that, ultimately blessed him deeply with respect to a career. I think that would make him more honest about it. I could talk a long time about him for some reason. But, Springsteen, I've never listened to an album, and I feel like I can't judge certain eras of music until I really sit down with an album.
Yeah.
So I don't think I have a strong opinion about him, but I'm happy if he's comes on, but I don't know if I could sit down and listen to. I'll have to do that soon, I feel. But that's interesting. I just find that I find aesthetic disagreements in modernity interesting, because everyone kind of, I have to deal with this all the time at the art center when people, mostly non-artists, say to me that art is purely subjective, and it's a very boring idea that I don't think is true. So I like to hear about people's differences in respect to that. And I feel that poetry kind of went to a place where I feel most people didn't feel comfortable judging it, just like modern visual art. Like the common person was like, I don't even know if this is good or bad. And there's something gratifying about that, I think, for people, however base it may seem.
Like being able to make a call on it?
It's grounded somewhat in this reality enough for like my parents to be just like, oh, that's not good, or that's good. I think that speaks to a common humanity. I don't really believe the notion that, the common person became so out of touch at a certain point that they kind of have to be cloistered off and ignored from a aesthetic perspective.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense.
I think so. I don't know. I'm thinking about like how like poetry has been so academicized. Is that the right word? Where people feel like they're not allowed to have an opinion on it, or like they don't have they haven't paid for the tools that you need to understand it, which is not a great thing for the medium.
Well, that's what I was shocked by William Carlos Williams, because it's so easy to visualize and understand. It isn't clear if you would say, oh, that's great poetry, but I find that it's very accessible. And just like jazz, actually.
I was going to say the same thing. It's like become so institutionalized.
Yeah, it's ironic in some sense, but there's a cartoon develops. Like, I'll write poetry. A cartoon of oneself doing the thing, I find, occurs where, like, and I don't know if this occurs for you, Lesley, but the act of writing poetry, or even the act of enjoying jazz for me, I feel like I'm in some meta situation where it's hard to be sincere. I don't really love jazz, but that is important to note. But it's almost like there's this image of what a poem should be. I don't know why that is true. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's funny. So, like, I think of myself as a poet, but I think at the same time, the form I'm working in now is more, and I don't know if this sounds like even more not highfalutin, but, just like at a distance from normal people, but like a hybrid essay or like a lyric essay situation. So, like, just bringing like the music or the free form feel to prose, because I do want that, like, understand that connection. I don't like when writing is so obtuse or so extrapolated from reality that you can't understand it without a degree. Like, I hate that.
Yeah, can you tell me, it doesn't need to be so extreme, but who's a poet that you think is absolutely overrated, and vice versa? So that I might understand. I'm very interested by certain poets, but I don't feel like I have a very clear opinion about the last 100 years or so.
Sure. I think one that comes to mind that's not overrated is maybe underrated in the wider world. Except I'm not in touch with the wider world, so who knows. But Amy Nezhumakuna-Tatil, I think she teaches at University of Mississippi, but her writing is it's just really beautiful. And she writes a lot about, like, her personal life, but also brings in nature and isn't afraid to be, like, fully herself. Her aesthetic is real together. It's really bright and kind of, like, full of really vivid descriptions of nature and of food, and it's just, like, kind of full on all the time.
And
that kind
check
of
that out.
She's wonderful, and I like that because I think a lot of poets are afraid to be. I don't know if afraid to be themselves, but it's just like I imagine it as they have an idea, and instead of just saying the idea, they kind of, like, put it through 3 kinds of filters first.
Yes.
Which I just feel are wholly unnecessary and do a disservice to making a connection with a reader.
Well, it's tricky because the form, this is why I like writing haikus. It's so, I think oftentimes you find yourself and your voice via a very restrictive form, or I'm just talking about myself here. So in poetry, it's so, I feel like you're not writing sonnets or something. So it feels like all of the rules really got thrown out at a certain point. And I wonder how much that mushiness does a disservice to the medium. And actually that comes to like how you would teach it. Because I find that, like, in teaching it when I was in art school, if someone said it was, if the advice was kind of like follow your path, I'm kind of like, well, why am I paying you or looking to you for guidance, tens of thousands of dollars, etc. So how do you teach poetry? What is your style or your approach for that?
I It's funny. I got to sub a creative writing class at my high school last week, and it was so much fucking fun. And we read a poem. Mm-hmm. I don't even remember the name of the poem. It's been a week. That's fine. It's gone to the wind. But it was like, for one, it was with kids who like really wanted to be there and talk about poetry. But it was a matter of the way I did it, right? And this was off the cuff. I just learned I was going to be teaching the class like half an hour before it happened. But it's all about looking at form. And by form, I don't necessarily mean sonnet or haiku, but just how the words are put together. Because I think, and this is part of having been a high school teacher for a minute, readers or students forget that there's actually a person that wrote it and put the things in a certain spot on purpose and included certain words and included certain images, and that it didn't just like arrive that way, most likely, on the first try, and that they edit it and like move things around. And so just like reading it like once for feel and then also for sound, and then trying to like put themselves, and this is for people who are like wanting to know, like to write their own poetry too, but like putting themselves in the driver's seat per se, like and being like, okay, like why this word here, why this order of the way that a memory unfolds, or the way that seeing in the poem there's a group of women standing outside of a post office, and this person remembers an old lover and tries to figure out what they might be doing at that moment, and just thinking about like why this order of operations and why these particular images, and kind of like reverse engineering it.
So very conscious.
Yeah.
I remember a couple weeks after I met Lesley, she showed me some of her poems, and the thing that struck me right away was the sound of the words is actually really way more important than I had realized, in that it's music in itself, and it's more like a sculpture of sounds and words than like, of course the meaning of the words is important too, but it's just as important.
Yeah, I've always liked listening to poets read their own work.
Yeah.
I think that's important too.
Yeah. I don't know, thought that was relevant for some reason.
When I had graduated undergrad and I had started teaching in the New York City public school system, Karl was still at New School, and he took a poetry workshop.
Oh man, this is great.
Took a poetry workshop. I was sad because I was teaching public school and I no longer had an identity as like an art student. And so I wrote all of the poems for Karl that semester.
And I took them into class, and the teacher was like, Karl, you really have a gift here, really special poems. And like I would workshop them and then bring back the notes to Lesley, and she would like edit the poem for me, and then I would bring it in and like present, and I was like the little star of the class. And one of my friends in the class knew what was going on, and Ross Clark knew what was going on. He would shoot me dirty looks all class, but that was really fun.
Yeah.
So you're a fraud.
Yeah, I'm fully a fraud.
Together we are a fraud.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I've not forgotten you, Karl. Again, I'm trying to understand how to balance speaking.
All good.
Because we go down one path, but then there's how do we get to your path? I think, I do think there is some connection there with jazz and also classical. In terms of, it's always been interesting to me that both of them feel like living in, well, maybe not poetry as you just said it, but from my initial perspective, going into the conversation, living inside of a kind of dead carcass of a medium.
Wow, yeah, totally.
And it's on some kind of life support, but maybe the cycle will somehow come back. And classical is it's just interesting to me, that trajectory, because I don't think I've interviewed someone who like really, I should interview the guy I know, but like is in like the Philharmonic or whatever, and they're just doing it.
Yeah.
But I have interviewed a lot of people who kind of start there and then, again, deeply corrupted by the modern world. I'm kidding. And then they find their way to kind of jam that really beautiful concern into some very weird situations.
Yeah, totally.
I don't know if there was a question in there, but
Can you elaborate more on the beautiful concern, what you mean?
well, I think at least my very limited understanding of classical, which I listen to more and more, is like there is a concern for beauty. It's it's a priority.
I see. Concern with beauty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it, being worked to a score is kind of a it's at the service of something else, which doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing, and I think there are people who exist in that. Like, I don't know if John Williams even makes music outside of scores.
He does, yeah.
And is it good?
It's great, yeah. He's written a few orchestral pieces and a violin concerto, I think, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm taken back to when I first came in the Art Center, and there's like all these pianos, many of them shitty. One of them is a Steinway we kept, but just the trying to give away pianos was impossible. Sorry.
Yeah.
That was sad to me.
Yeah.
So I had to smash all these shitty pianos.
Sounds fun, kind of.
It was fun, but it was also just this realization. That same thing was true with the 35 millimeter projectors that weren't working in the building, but there is just this, again, I'm thinking about that call to conform as you get older. I don't think it's necessarily a compromise, but it is a reality of like, you have to fit in somehow, and classical, again, yeah, I think there's something very pure, even poetry also, there's something very, very pure, and then how those things get expressed commercially, or even just, day-to-day, pragmatically, what your culture is willing to take in is a fascinating set of problems.
I think the desire to fit in led us to Los Angeles in a way. Like, we are both in various mediums and wear different hats. And we were living in Kansas City where...
Oh, yeah, I forgot to ask. So you're from Kansas City?
I am from Wisconsin originally.
I'm from Massachusetts.
Interesting.
And, we met in Brooklyn. Moved to Iowa so Lesley could do her master's there. Then didn't know what to do exactly and ended up moving to Kansas City for, I guess, 6 years. And then we lived in Lawrence, Kansas, where the University of Kansas is, and Lesley did her PhD. And then we both were starting to get so depressed living in the Midwest and feeling like all I could do there was like play jazz gigs, and like there was a very low ceiling in terms of like what I could do professionally. And then since I moved here, people accept like, oh, you play cello as well, you paint as well. Like, that's an acceptable way to be here. Lesley's a teacher and an artist and a writer. And that's also like, that's acceptable. People understand that here. So that is a nice...
So you feel good. You feel good there.
We do feel good here.
Yeah.
We really like it
Nice.
here. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
It seems like a good place for musicians. I don't know. I can't speak to the textile stuff.
Me neither.
But I feel like there's, I mean, the textile stuff is largely inspired by tarot, right?
Yeah, lately that's the path I've been going down for sure. Making like reproductions of like 18th and 19th century tarot cards. Yeah.
Oh, they're reproductions.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Interesting.
they're reiterations. I don't know if reproduction is the exact right word.
Yeah, I suppose all tarot is just iterations on a theme.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Most
And do you practice tarot?
I do, yeah. I've done it since I was in high school, so it's kind of a very central part of my life and has been there for a really long time. Yeah.
Central in what sense? You divine wisdom from that?
Sure, absolutely. It's like a way that I check in with myself and with the world around me, and like use it as a kind of I don't know, guardrail, or it's something that has grown with me over time, and I kind of trust and learn to trust myself through it too. Some combination of the images, right, which are really beautiful, and like you get to know them in your own way, having a, I don't know, 20-year, 25-year relationship with them. And then just like the way in which it kind of continually reveals new things about yourself and about the cards too. And it's a really nice community too, mostly online, that I've fell into, as far as other artists who work in that with that like visual vocabulary. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I'm doing a collaboration right now I'm really excited about with a friend in France.
A relief? Like a bas relief, or does that just mean that the textile has a puffiness to it?
Oh, yeah. The quilting adds a dimension for sure.
Mm. I'd like to speak more about the collaborations you've done. As you mentioned that earlier. Mm-hmm. How is that frequent, or is it better in some sense to have it a little more separated out?
I think for a long time, because we are both artists in our own way, people are always like, what are you going to work on together? Are you collaborating? Mm-hmm. What are you making?
We're like, fuck you.
Yeah, we're like, we're not going to fuck anything together. Mm-hmm. It's going to make a beautiful life. Isn't that enough? But then a friend, Tiara, collaborate, or like, what did she do? She would like host these. How would she describe them?
I forget. It's called Center of Light, I think was the name of the event, but it was all ambient music, and you could bring a pillow or sleeping bag or whatever. You could lie down and just like take in the ambient music. And
she asked us to collaborate.
Yeah, right? She did.
So someone asked, and we were like, okay, sounds great.
I think because I learned that this woman was a DJ, and she kind of makes like avant-garde tracks, like strange mashups. And I was like, oh, Lesley does that too. She takes very seemingly unrelated songs, but then she finds these common threads together and makes these incredible, again, pretty avant-garde, but incredible mashups of these different songs. And then I got to talking with Tira about like, oh, she's a writer. And then she invited us to collaborate on those events.
But that was it.
Yeah, that was it pretty much.
That's interesting.
Once we collaborated on a couple paintings. You wrote words on my paintings.
Yes.
Because Lesley also does calligraphy.
Mm. I think our life is our creative collaboration more than...
That's probably wisest, I would think.
Yeah.
It can be difficult. It can be difficult collaborating on work.
Yeah, it can.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's like children's book writers who are married couples, and I'm always like, wow, that is...
That seems really intense.
Yeah, that's a lot to me. But I guess I come back to that because I'm thinking about, as I'm interviewing two individuals, again, just the synergy or the overlap, or even the unique quality of that, as opposed to interviewing one artist. So I'm trying to think of what could be imparted to the listener. Do you have any advice for artists dating or marrying artists? Is that too much of a... Is there too much pressure there? Or are you just humans? Is that how you see it?
We're definitely artists.
Yeah, definitely artists. I think living life creatively together
Yeah, what does that mean? Break that down for me.
A few years ago, we opened up our relationship and we're sort of in the poly space.
Mm-hmm.
And that feels really exciting and creative to like restructure the relationship based on our like desires and wants out of life instead of living according to the scripted way that things go.
And so you did that how many years into your relationship?
Well,
17?
Yeah, 16.
17, yeah.
We had a few early experiments with it, but when we were living in New York still, but then came back to it.
Mm-hmm. So creatively, it means... Well, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think it has to do with, like, being enthusiastic supporters of each other, like, in both our creative work, but also in our creative, like, ways of being in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And being, like, open and excited about change instead of trying to, like, thwart it.
Right, and like hold fast to the way things should be or the way things are.
Yeah.
So in some sense, staying creative here is being used as it's kind of about actively revisiting the contours of the relationship.
Yeah, like rearranging the furniture.
Right, well, every 6 months, as you said.
Yeah.
Why are you rearranging the furniture so much?
Oh, man.
This is like a Waldorf. In Waldorf stuff, there's often like you got to cleanse that energy. You got to shake it up.
Yeah, it has to do with this stagnant feeling I'll get of like, oh man, this has been this way just because it has remained this way. How can we better use this little corner or something? Or like rotating the kitchen table 90 degrees will suddenly like open up some kind of different vision for the kitchen. And like,
we've also moved 15 or 12. I was
maybe 13 times
together. So like,
really,
yeah,
that's disturbing.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're always, because right now we have half a living room is because we're in Karl's studio now, and then half of the living room is my studio. So we're always trying to like optimize based on what's happening in our worlds.
Yeah.
Like the space we need, and trying not to like let a living room be a living room if it really wants to be a studio instead.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I'd be remiss if I did not mention that you've worked with... Have you both worked with Dory and Ming-Jie Chen?
I mean, yeah, I think...
I've been there when they're working. Does that count?
That I think that counts.
Okay.
Yep, I will see Ming-Jie tomorrow, and we saw Dory yesterday.
What do you think is going on there in terms of what is this little bubble? Well, how would you kind of explain? Like, I know some people in it or orbiting it. There seems to be some shared quality to it.
I think everyone in this bubble that you're speaking of has the beauty concern.
Okay, fair enough.
I feel like everyone in the bubble is concerned with the authenticity and sincerity in art in whatever medium, and that we are all actively seeking that out in our community, and that we all get together and share those qualities, and then also bitch about people who aren't authentic.
Which is fun, right?
Yeah?
I'm thinking about like, it's so wild to have the beauty concern in Los Angeles, in which the mainstream beauty concern is making sure you don't have wrinkles.
Yeah, conformity.
Oh, true. I forgot about that whole thing.
Yeah, I think that a lot. I go to a really lovely yoga studio, but it's just like everyone wants to be 20 years old forever. Anyway.
Well, that could be a very... It isn't actually clear when you talk about beauty in general. It's a difficult word. I think in some sense it has to be tethered to something eternal because, as you mentioned, if it's flesh oriented, it decays naturally.
Yeah.
So I know it's a big question, and it's also a really big question, I do think, in modernity, because we're influenced by such a kind of strange mixture of things often, where, you know, I'll talk about beauty and then people might look at my work and be like, well, this doesn't really look beautiful in the way I would think a sunset or Renaissance painting is. But when you both talk about beauty or the concern of it, what's the most concise way you would explain that to someone? It's a ridiculous question.
It is ridiculous, but I'm going to try. I think there's beauty. Like, I find intense beauty in the conglomeration of all the strip malls in the San Fernando Valley and how the different business names, like a poetic beauty, and how, like, there's a tax place and a hair place and a Thai restaurant, and they all have these really cute, quirky names, and they're all on a sign together, and there's something insanely beautiful about that. And that is beauty. But then also there's a beautiful sunset here every day, and that is beauty. And the sound of the highway.
It's a freeway.
It's a freeway, I'm sorry. The sound of the freeway at night is beautiful. I don't know.
Well, yeah, go ahead, Liz.
I was going to say, it's like, I forget exactly how you phrased the original question, but I think I remember the vibe. I think like the beauty being the ability to, like, to be yourself in every situation is the beauty, right? And, like, not to avoid the maybe it's a personal instinct, but, like, the instinct to hide or to obscure. Yeah.
So in that sense, the self to you has some kind of transcendent, potentially eternal quality.
Sure, right, and in the way that you choose to, or you're able to express the self to other people who also have selves. But I think that often it gets trained out of us, whether through school, which is like a normalizing machine, or through just like society as a whole. But yeah, the ability to like hold on to that like true inner feeling and expression, and also like communicate it to other people.
Yeah. And Karl, when you're saying that the strip malls are beautiful, it has me wondering.
I take it back.
No. I understand what you mean because I'm from New Jersey.
Yeah,
for
sure.
I can understand the kind of like rhythm of decay in some sense that can be. But I'm more interested in, I think in the past, again, it's a hard thing to kind of get your hands around, but there were these like clear notions of beauty in some sense, and even if it sometimes was architectural, there's this clear formulation, the golden rule or something. There's now this sense of personal beauty where we all find, and it speaks to what you're saying, Lesley, in some sense, we have developed our own systems of recognizing these things, whereas obviously someone would look at the strip malls of LA and be like, this is disgusting. And it's what's interesting is when you have to bring it into art that connects beyond you, or even community, like we're talking about the bubble of what's going on with Mingja, Dory, etc. That's what's interesting to me, is like, it seems like the more challenging thing is how you meet everyone else or the world, and kind of still express something timeless, and all I can say is beautiful. Like, does your music reflect the strip malls of LA?
I think so, yeah.
Well, then.
But that's just because I'm inspired by them. Like, I get inspired by that type of shit. But I think we're sort of headed towards something like being authentically yourself, like Lesley was saying, comes from like a letting go of preconceived notions of culture, of structure, and of kind of a stillness, like a self-stillness, and just being the observer, and then it feels like you can connect with almost anything and find it beautiful if you're still, if that makes any sense.
Like bird watching.
Yeah.
I think it does.
Yeah, I think so too, but I'm not sure.
I guess I often think of the constraints that lead to the beauty, the things that aren't beautiful, right? Mm-hmm. But it sounds like the way you're presenting it is there's modes of perception that perhaps don't lead to beauty, but that stillness would cut through somehow and pierce through anything to reach its beauty.
Yeah, I think that's right. Like, I noticed Hogwarts today.
Sure.
From a dog walk
at Universal.
Yeah, Universal Studios. Which,
what do you mean? You just see Hogwarts?
Yeah, we live like kind of up against a hill, and I walk the dogs on the hillside sometimes, and I saw it, and I was like, "Oh, look at that! Isn't that ugly?" And some days I look at it and like, "Oh, isn't that beautiful?" So what's up with that? Like, I don't know.
Now we're talking about the whole building of Hogwarts is up over
You're
there?
talking about Harry Potter Land inside of Universal Studios.
Yeah, LA is so strange.
You got that right.
Yeah. It is so strange.
Yeah.
I have a map where I'm thinking about, but I don't know exactly what part it links up to.
Give it a shot.
Do you guys watch Double Dare when you're little?
Oh, yeah.
What's that again?
The Nickelodeon game show with Mark Summers.
Like slime and...
They slimed him.
They slimed him.
They for sure slimed him.
Slime slammed him. I don't know. It's just there would be like this like disgusting obstacle course that they would have to go through, and you'd have to carry your little flag all the way through and not lose it, and all the junk and the gunk and the slime. And that's, I feel like beauty is that like little flag, and you have to you have to get through the giant mouth, and you have to belly crawl on the oil slick and get it to your teammate.
Yes, dude.
So it's like an act of survival in some sense.
Yeah, it's protecting.
Preservation.
Yeah.
I see what you mean. I like that.
Great.
Yes.
Great.
We got it.
Put it in the podcast.
Well, tangibly speaking, I especially ask polymaths this, but like, where can people, what is the most direct experience of, well, since we're talking about the authentic self in this, of either or both of your authentic selves? You know, clearly you both do many things, so is there one crystallization where you say, oh, that's, you know, whatever, if it was sent out into outer space as a representation of yourself? Is it a song? Is it a score? Is it a poem? Is it a tapestry? Is it... Where can it be found tangibly for a listener?
Mine right now is my Substack for sure. It's I'm trying.
Can it be accessed without paying for it?
Yeah, it's all free. It's all free.
Is there going to be a paywall soon?
I don't know. I don't think so. I have one paid subscriber, and I'm pretty proud of that. They didn't have to do that.
They just did it. That's cool.
They just did it. Yeah.
So what is that? How do they find that?
It's called Unmarked Exit. So unmarkedexits.substack.com.
And you're saying Substack is a good idea?
For me, it's a good idea. I wouldn't say, I don't know everyone, but
I only ask because I'm considering it, and I used to love Tumblr, so
yeah,
perhaps.
It's nice because you get the whatever inner drug it is from like social media, but it's all, I mean, not all, but it's a lot of just writing and ideas as opposed to, I don't know, dog memes, which I also love, but it's a different space.
Okay, so the Substack, which has a lot of poetry on it? Or poetic things.
Poetic things. I'm writing like lyric essay is how I'm thinking of it. So it's prose ultimately.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Karl?
Let's see. I think. Well, I'm really proud of a lot of the music I've made. I have a group called String Boys that I've made a lot of beautiful music that I'm really proud of. There's a song called Thank You, I'm Sorry, I Love You that is, I have a version of String Boys, and there's a few other versions you can find of it. I think there's a album coming out this weekend with my friend Larry Goldings, who is like an incredible pianist and musician, and I've just gotten the most intense joy and beauty out of working with him recently, and I'm really proud of that record. So that's called I Will, and it's under Larry's name, Larry Goldings.
And these will be found on Spotify?
Soon, yes, it will be found on Spotify.
Well, that's perfect.
Well, Lesley's whispering. I should also say that I'm also really proud of the film score I'm working on. It's for a movie called If She Burns, written and directed by Alex Wolff, that is going to be made this year. And yeah, I'm actually really excited about that score and film.
Fantastic. Mm. What did I miss? Did we miss anything?
What did you... Oh, yeah, go ahead.
We did.
Karl went viral on TikTok and Instagram in the past week.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because
and how has your life changed? Tangibly.
Tangibly, I appreciate the banality of social media, but it's because I filmed myself playing upright bass with my little chihuahua in one arm, and it sort of looks like she's controlling my arm, I guess, to people.
The people love it.
Yeah, people think it's like a Ratatouille type thing.
You know, in my brief research prior to this call, I did encounter that, and I was confused.
As you should be.
Because all the comments seemed like they had no idea who you were in some sense. They were just general people asking questions.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's absolutely true. No one has any...
Whereas the other stuff I was seeing, it's like, yeah, you like your friends and things. And this was like, well, that's cool. How does that feel?
It feels funny. I unintentionally included Rita, the Chihuahua, in the new single artwork for a single I have coming out in a couple of weeks, and I'm going to be filming a music video with her this week, just kind of like, and it worked out that like I've got this weird traction on social media with her, so I want to see where that goes.
Wow, yeah. I'm fascinated to see what you do with that traction.
Thank you, me too. Yeah, that song is called American Fight Song, and I'm putting it out under a new name, which is K Pasta.
K Pasta.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I'm excited to see where it goes, too.
Well, congrats on the virality.
Thank you so much. It means a lot.
It could mean something.
It really could. Yeah, it really could.
Well, good to meet you both.
You too.
Yeah, same.
Thanks for having us.
All right, well, have a good night.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Music by Dori Bavarsky and Mingja Chen. I don't know who's next, but there'll be a next one.